Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. So glad you all could join us today. I'm excited to welcome Patti Flinn to our broadcast today. We're about to connect with our friends over on IG. If you guys are new to Patti, we will let you guys know how to stay connected with her and all the great things that she's doing. We're also going to connect with our friends over on Amazon as well. And we're live on Amazon Live with our guest, author Patti Flinn. I had a chance to read Patti's book, The Greatest Thing. You guys see here. It was one of my top books for 2024. I want to talk to Patti not only about her amazing writing journey, but also what it's been like for her to do what she loves and to see the response from all of you. We are simulcast today. So even though we are on Amazon, we are simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. If you guys have any questions or comments for Patti, make sure you guys put those in the chat. Jay Martin Jr., hello to you. I see you over there on IG. For those joining us on Amazon, there's a follow button either here in this corner or down below. Click that button to stay connected with all of our programming here on Amazon. You also will see Patti's books there. Patti, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, look, the pleasure's definitely all mine. So you and I were just talking about here we are in 2025, but 2024, I had a chance to be able to read this book, The Greatest Thing, book one in your series. I loved it so much. I chose it as one of our top books for 2024. Talk to us about this journey for you as a storyteller, Patti. What has it been like for you to identify what you love when it comes to writing and to share that with all of us?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. I started off writing a very long time ago. I started writing suspense. I've been a writer for my whole life, but then it occurred to me that maybe somebody might like to read what I was writing. So
Mm-hmm.
my first novel was a self-published suspense. Um, because it was kind of heavy, I decided to go into romance writing. And I did that off and on for several years. Right before the pandemic, I had kind of gone into a lull. I wasn't really sure if I should be writing, what I should be writing, and if I still wanted to do it, if I still had the love for it. And I ran across this image of this gentleman who lived in 18th century France, and I did some research on him. I never intended to write historical fiction, but then we went into the pandemic, and I found myself with a lot of time in front of the computer. And so then I accidentally became a historical fiction writer. I decided his life was so interesting. I had to tell the tale from his point of view. And after I started, then I realized I had inadvertently switched genres. So that's kind of my journey from what I usually write to historical fiction.
Love that. Jocelyn, hello to you. Good to see you over there and on IG as well. You know, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think what is so interesting about The Greatest Thing, and for our audience out there who haven't had a chance to read the book or read any of Patti's work, we're going to let you guys know how to do that. What I love is that you're able to tell a story that is, as you mentioned, it's historical fiction, but it is something that is so relatable because I guess it goes to the whole thing, Patti, that we say people being people. What was it like for you to be able to get to know these individuals, to kind of transport yourself back to the 1700s and to kind of see the world through their eyes?
It was a challenge because I'd never done anything like it before. I always knew historical fiction was a bear because of all the research you have to do, which is probably one of the reasons why I stayed away from it. But once I decided to do it, I had to research all of the main people that were going to be a part of his life circle. I knew I was going to center the story around him. But throughout history, the people who have been written about and talked about are all of the other people in his life. So it was an interesting thing to try to develop a story from his point of view when so little was known about him and everything was known about everybody else. So yeah, it was a challenge. The interesting thing is I found that when I started telling his life from his point of view, it changed my perception of everyone in history around him that we think we know so much about. It became an entirely different story from what I originally thought it was going to be.
Wow, love that. Do you feel, hello to you, Zimmer Entertainment Group? Good to see you over there on IG as well. Was that also part of the freedom you felt, though, Patti, as well? Because I think for a lot of times when there is a lack, and I think about for myself a movie that I saw a couple years ago, Chevalier. and I had never heard of Blown before, and to be able to see this movie, I was so fascinated that this person existed. you know, I didn't think about till later. Okay, how much of this was actually creative license? And how much was because I was just excited about the story. Was that kind of part of the fun for you to be able to fill in the blanks and using your creativity to do that?
It was, and the interesting thing is I went to a conference in 2024 and talked about this very thing
Mhm.
because on the one hand, creative license allows you to do anything you want. On the other hand, ethically speaking, you don't want to just go haywire and crazy because you're dealing with real people who have real family members, um, you know, and so you want to be careful, but still you want to be true to your story. So I did at in the very beginning I had a real hard time because I was trying to stick very, very closely to historical fact and what we know. But then I came across this quote, this short article or interview about from Toni Morrison, who they were asking her about Beloved. And what she said was she had read just one paragraph about this real woman who was the basis for this movie. And she said she didn't want to read any more about her because she didn't want it to affect her story. And
Oh
I
wow.
thought that's a fascinating way of looking at it.
Mhm.
Um, as a storyteller, we have a responsibility to the story first. If I was a historian, it'd be completely different. But it took me a while to accept the fact that I could go places that, on my own, I might not have done. If I was thinking too much about the history and staying true, I might not have done. But when I decided to look at it as a storyteller first and then go where the story took me, then it changed everything.
Yeah. So for you then, and I love the fact the way you set this up with for us, Patty, talking about, of course, during the pandemic, I think we all got a lot of chance to think and to find ways to not lose ourselves in the process, right? Did you, when you started though, did you know that it would be the beginning of a series, or was that something that as you got into reading and researching, you realized that this is something you wanted to continue?
I knew it was going to be a series. I thought it was going to be a three-book, three novellas. I
Okay.
thought it was going to be, three short, quick books that I was going to knock out relatively quickly because it's a story of his life, and um, so I didn't think it would be so involved. And then it became three, or it became five novellas, and
Mm,
then I decided to pull back a little bit, and now it's three full-length books in the trilogy, and they're thick books.
yeah,
they're not they're not little books, but I wanted the depth of character. And after I started really liking his character and liking who he was, it made me want to explore him even more.
yeah. I think I mentioned earlier, Patty, about people being people. I think the thing that's interesting though about the time frame, and I think for any of us kind of thinking about, we talk about American history, right? I think what we find is so many similarities, right, in the history of other parts of the world too. Was that something that struck you as you were writing and also researching?
Absolutely, I think. When I was in school, I wasn't all that interested in history. Not that I didn't know about my African American history. I
Yeah.
think probably I didn't like the way I was being taught African American history, and
Mm,
I found that there was a void I couldn't quite understand. And I didn't know until I was an adult, and this is embarrassing to say, but the public education has changed over the years. I
yeah.
didn't know until you know, I was an adult about slavery and outside of the United States. I didn't
Yeah.
know what was going on outside of the United States in relation to us. And I
Yeah.
think when I started researching this story, it taught me a great deal about American history. One thing that it did was it allowed me to look at American history not so closely. One of the reasons I didn't want to do really delve into an American historical fiction was because I felt too close to it. I knew it was going to bring up all sorts of things that I wasn't quite sure I was ready for.
Mhm.
So this allowed me to address slavery, in another country, in another time with someone that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to look at it without quite as much, well, I thought it wasn't going to be as emotional for me as it ended up being.
Mhm. Let's talk about readers for a moment, because I think one thing I've heard consistently over the years, Patty, are authors who talk about, they kind of feel like they're in a vacuum. Yeah, because you're spending so much time by yourself and with these characters. When you were able to release them, to free them to the world, what has it been like for you to see the way that readers have responded to
It's exciting because this is a subject that I didn't know a lot about.
them?
And as the stories got out there, I found out that other people didn't know a lot about it either. They were interested because they had never read anything about this time in history in France, and eager to learn more about it. I started off before released The Greatest Thing. I released two novellas based on a character from this story, kind of like a prequel.
Hmm.
And when I was doing a beta read, there was a woman who told me, I don't quite understand, because I feel like I can sense, I know what the time period is and I know what's going on, but I'm having a hard time jiving that this is another country and understand what was going on in the other country. And it was exciting to me that someone else out there felt the same thing. It's almost like a parallel universe. We know
Yeah.
what's going on in the United States. We don't know what's going on there. And I had my question about whether the Black people in France at the time knew what was going on and how brutal the slave trade was from their standpoint. But it was interesting because getting this feedback from readers confirmed my thoughts that, we just don't have enough information about it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that is a really good, and it kind of is what I was trying to allude to earlier, Patty, when I was talking about, we know the time frame that this is written in, but just it reads very familiar. It's so, so I think that's part of the connection. Did the response to book one, what we're talking about in 2023, did that make you more excited or nervous about the second book coming out last year?
Both. I was scared to death about book two. So book one is really learning who he is as a human being, up until adulthood, up until the start of the French Revolution. And I knew it was a great way for readers to become invested in him and his life story. Book two is a good deal of the background happenings of the French Revolution and the start of the French Revolution and all the many things that were happening. There was so much happening during that time period. And when I was writing it, I found that I almost felt overwhelmed by everything that was going on in history at the time.
Wow.
And so I had to be careful. I had to pull back and make sure I was centering his story and not getting caught up in the weeds of everything that was going on politically.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, so it's scary whenever you put out book two.
Yeah.
Book three, I'm petrified as well. So it never stops.
Well, at least you're consistent, Patty.
Yeah, yeah.
There's that. There's that. For those that are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents or listening to Conversations Live on Max WYED 94.1 FM, iHeartRadio, on Amazon Music. We're joined by author Patti Flinn today. We're talking with her about her writing journey, how she's kicking out 2025, being scared of book three in this series that she's created, but also what it's been like for to hear from you guys. We're going to let you guys know also how to stay connected with Patty. So I do want to ask you the flip side of this, because a lot of authors are afraid that they may lose an audience by trying something new. What do you say to authors out there about embracing the challenge of just writing what you feel like you want to write?
It's a hard decision because most of my career, the general rule is that you pick a genre and you stick to it. And the industry has kind of followed that as well. It's a relatively new thing that writers are, exploring other genres. It's been going on, I want to say like past 10 years or so. People have been doing it more and more, but
Mhm.
it can be a challenge to your career, especially if you're an unknown, especially if you don't have a huge platform. You take a risk by, switching up genres. I think the reason why I was able to do it was because I had gotten to a point in my career where I was like, well, I'm either going to write what I want to write or I'm not going to write anymore.
Right.
It just came down to that.
Mhm.
When I went into this, I went into it knowing that I might not get a foundation. I might not get fans. This might be a labor of love for me alone,
Mhm.
but I was invested in the story. So I went ahead and did it. But it's a hard decision to make if you're a new writer and you're just starting out and you're trying to build an audience.
Right.
You might want to stick with a genre just at least for a couple of books so people can get used to you and your writing before they know that they're willing to go with you wherever you go.
Love that. Love that. So here we are in 2025. Hard to believe. Over halfway through the month. February is looking right at us. Patti, what is it that our audience should be on the lookout for from Patti Flynn this year?
Well, so book two came out in July of 2024. That's called The Devil's Berries. In 2025, now I should already be finished with my last revision. I am not. But the last book in the trilogy is called The Truest Son of France. And that is, I think every book that I'm working on is my favorite. It is, I love the story. I just love the character. And I'm excited for every opportunity that there is for people to learn about this person. My dream is for somebody somewhere to go into their attic and find some paperwork about Louis Benoit Zamore and to expose to the world because I really think people need to know who he was.
Mhm.
He is a hidden figure. He was almost lost in history. I'm If I can do a small part in reintroducing him to the world so that the memory of him can stay alive a little longer, I'm happy to. Um, and so I'll be doing a lot more talking about him this year.
Love that. Love that. Well, I'm excited to see what's coming. Again, everyone, Patti Flynn has been our guest. Make sure you guys get The Greatest Thing. Also, you heard her mention book two. I just shared it with you guys, The Devil's Berries. And we're going to give her some space for book three. But in the meantime, you guys can catch up with these two books. Patti, great talking with you. Let our audience know, though, how can they stay connected with you?
Please go to gildedorangebooks.com. That's GILDED orangebooks.com. That's my website. You can find all my books there. I am on Facebook. You can find me at Gilded Orange Books on Facebook as well.
All right. Patti, congratulations to you. So glad we got a chance to connect. Looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you. Thank you
More
for
than
having me.
glad to do it. We thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents and Conversations Live. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.